Hi, today we're going to be discussing the tomb of Payava.
So what is the tomb of Payava? Well, it is a rectangular freestanding barrel-vaulted tomb which was excavated from Turkey in the 19th century. It's a great example of Lycian culture and has many aspects to explore.
Fun fact, the tomb had 4 tiers originally, but here in the museum there are only 3 due to the bottom tier being in bad condition. What period of time is it from though?
It's from the Greek period dating from between 375 to 362 and belonged to the ruler at the time of Xanthos, whose name was Payava. But how do we know that though?
Well, there's an inscription on the south side of the second tier of the tomb, which you can see below, stating his name and his race.
Before we go into more detail, let's take a look at the decorations on the tomb. There are 3 different tiers of decoration on the tomb. On the roof, the middle and the bottom frieze. On each side of the bottom frieze there are various different scenes.
On the east side of the frieze, a battle is depicted involving men on horseback and foot soldiers. On the south side of the frieze, we can see 2 soldiers dressed in cloaks and armour. The space surrounding the 2 figures is an inscription that mentions Payava himself, possibly meaning that he is one of the 2 figures on the tomb.
Okay.
Payava himself appears on the tomb, riding on horseback on the tomb's second tier. We believe that it is him due to the fact that his posture is very dominating and open, and he appears to be holding a spear and wearing a cloak. If you look at the frieze itself, there's a figure there's a bit of space behind, and he's the only kind of prominent figure on horseback. So this kind of is the reason why we think it might be him, because it's the most prominent figure, and obviously because the tomb is dedicated to him, it would make sense to have him depicted somewhere on the tomb.
Sadly, we have lost the face of Payava, but nevertheless, it doesn't take away from his dominant figure, since he still has his cloak and body armour, and his spear arm raised. There is an inscription above his head that reads, Payava Manakai made this tomb.
This Manakai word is obscure and difficult to translate. Some argue that it is supposed to denote Payava's original origin.
There are various different topics of decoration, and judging by the figures on one particular side of the tomb, it's carved in a Greek style, as the figures depicted are dressed in a traditional Greek clothing. The figure opposite, however, is dressed in traditional Persian clothing. It could have been presented by Autophrodates, who was the local ruler or satrap. On the alternative long side of the tomb, there is a scene depicting a battle.
The heads and torsos of lions and a Lycian royal symbol are depicted on the curved roof. The roof itself is decorated with a chariot that looks to be travelling fast. The horses that drag the chariot are all turning their heads in different directions, which serves to make this a lively Greek motif.
The gable end shows a seated Persian couple. This image links with a similar couple that are shown on one of the pediments of the Neram monument from Xanthos. Above these seated figures are a pair of sphinxes, who are traditional guardians of the dead.
On the highest level there are 2 friezes. The first depicts a wild animal hunt. In this frieze there is shown a bear that is raised up on its hind legs, and on the other frieze there is a battle between cavalry and the foot soldiers.
As the tomb was dedicated to Payava, it is likely that the scenes depicted on it have some significance to who he was and what he did in his life. We know that he was a wealthy aristocrat or ruler of some kind. This depiction of lions on the tomb could symbolise or relate to his courage as a leader in battle.
Being a ruler, you would have to be a leader and commander in battle at some point. Hence the battle scene where Payava himself may appear. It could be relevant to any of the military successes he may have had.
As the function of this monument is a tomb, it is interesting to note how few scenes depict and relate to the ideas of death and mortality. The battle scene shows a number of figures being killed or who have already died in battle, and these relate to the function of the tomb.
The bear being hunted also shares a link with death. The bear may be being hunted for sport, or maybe even to sacrifice or for food. On the 3rd tier there is a staggering of carvings to create the depth of the horses.
This shows skill and craftsmanship that went into the creation. This staggering technique, as we can see, is successful due to it being carried on in later artefacts.
The shallow carvings were more difficult, whereas the deeper carvings had a lot more detail. This allows for more figures to be depicted.
This is in comparison to the Parthenon, which is an earlier example. As time goes on, there were more deeper carvings, which shows the evolution in skills. Additionally, with the filling ornaments, some are harder to depict than others. For example, the spears, the shields, and the bodies.
The South frieze had deeper carving. It also has more drapery and motion lines, with more focus on the men depicted. We notice that these men have boxy muscles, which could seem quite unnatural compared to the true human body. Both men have a similar style of stance, which perhaps indicates a limited skill in design, but we don't necessarily know this for sure.
There is a level of contrapposto depicted, which is an asymmetrical arrangement of the human figure in which the lines of the arms and shoulders contrasts with, while also balancing, those of the hips and legs. Additionally, there isn't a lot going on in the background.
There is a question as to what this tomb aims to present Payava as and why. Was it created to praise a truly great ruler as thought of by his people or friends, or was it created by Payava himself as a form of propaganda?
It could have been a form of propaganda because of the images created. There is nothing particularly personal depicted on the tomb. These generic, typical scenes lack a personal feel that one could expect in a monument praising a figure.
Additionally, the inscription is purely factual, lacking in any adjectives which could lead us to believe that it wasn't built in praise of Payava. Perhaps it was built for Payava by an indifferent society for means of remembering an average leader.
This may not have been a particularly important monument in the Greek world. However, since it was erected in stone and has survived to modern times, we perhaps inflate its importance. As we are told by Ian Jenkins in Greek Architecture and its Sculpture,
the first tier remains at the site and comprises of a step base which supports a plinth of 4 massive slabs capped by a flat lid. The steps themselves are hollowed so as to form a chamber with the space enclosed by an orthostate above. The lid of the chamber also served as footing of the next tier, comprising a monolith with carved sides.
The tomb originally reached higher than 7 metres.
Millennia ago, the bodies were originally cremated or inhumated. In many cultures, including the Lycians, the bodies weren't mummified like in Egypt. Therefore, the tombs of the rulers from Lycia don't provide us with human remains that could be analysed by researchers in the laboratory.
So, we have no information about Payava's body. However, we can see that the tomb was a sign of respect and power.
Due to the mixture of styles and influence, the only possible conclusion is that the tomb can't be identified as belonging to any specific culture.
So this is the tomb of Payava, which stands in the British Museum today.
We hope those who have seen it thought it was impressive as those who built it hoped for it to be.
We apologise that we weren't able to attend the trip and hope our video has been sufficient. Thank you.